Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Today I just want to talk a little bit about legendaries in World of Warcraft. Ever since legendaries became not quite legendary, if you haven't noticed. Just about everybody in the Mother has one and they are simply become part of the game. The way Ilpilgrim put it to me is a lot like Diablo 3. And apparently in Diablo 3 legendaries drop like no other. And all they are just becomes as part of the game. It doesn't become like an actual overpowered item that had to be farmed for a while. It just becomes an integral part of the game, and it changes slightly your playstyle in some occasions for the much better, where you basically need that legendary in order to function, and in other cases for, I mean, I guess you could use it, but you'll find it without it. So I just want to take a look at some of the legendaries and what Blizzard has been doing with them as of late. Before we talk about the legendaries themselves, I want to talk about the differences of how Blizzard does the bad luck protection with gear as well as legendaries. They had a blue post, and I'll have that for MMO Champion link, where they say that yes, bad luck protection does exist. When it comes to normal loot from a boss, you have a generally 33% chance to get the gear you want. So you're rolling a 3-sided die. Now, by what I mean by saying gear you want is a 33% chance that your gear or your piece of gear will drop if we're talking personal loot. But legendaries are a little bit different. The way Blizzard describes legendaries, and this is not statistically correct, I believe the percentage for you to get a legendary is much lower than what they're describing, but hear me out before making any conclusions. What they describe it is, in case of, let's say, Boots of Unending Awesomeness, which is what the legendary item choice that they had, you are rolling a die 20 times. And what you're trying to do is roll that 3-sided die, and you're trying to get that 3, and you can never do it. And every time you don't get it, the 3 gets weighted more and more and more and more until to the point where it's going to be practically guaranteed. So eventually by the end of Legion, everybody will theoretically come out with at least one legendary. Although there are cases where some people have 3, even 4 legendaries, and they can swap them out depending on situations. And that's kind of what I want to talk a little bit about, is the importance of legendaries and what Blizzard turned it into. I was gonna say the word reduce them to, hear me out first and you might agree with me on this one, but I feel like there's so many legendaries in the game now when it comes to Legion that they just become an integral part of the game. Back in the day, legendaries used to be something that you worked your ass off for, and they were unique to certain classes, hell, even certain specs, and they were just something that if you had it, you had the prestigious ability to get a legendary and have it as an advantage, whether it's for PvE or PvP. But now legendaries, everybody has them, and my biggest issue with them, at first I thought legendaries would be really cool, and they were very interesting, right? They would do some small form of buffs, they would have some unique effects that would be used in specific situations, and I like that the most. I was thinking that it was going to be a good piece of gear with really good stats because it was ahead in terms of item level, and was like, yes, I'm lucky, and eventually everybody gets one. So, you know, everybody gets a legendary. It's fine that everybody gets a high item level piece of gear. But what I liked about them is their effects. For the most part, they didn't make too much of a difference, you know? They usually have to do with abilities that you normally never use. Like, for example, with rogues and a cape, the longer you wait, the more damage you'll be able to do with your fan of knives. So, for example, Assassination rogues would get in a single target fight with a boss, and the rotation would slightly change. So eventually, after spamming mutilates over and over and over, at one point they would actually just use fan of knives simply because it hit slightly harder. It generated 1 common point, it cost 35 energy, so it wasn't as efficient as a 55 energy mutilate, but it was still fun, and it changed your rotation slightly. It didn't completely change the gameplay, it just altered it, and it was like altering in a fun way, not in a point where it was like, whoa, game changing, you're dealing more damage than everybody else kind of way. And that's what I liked about it. Since Blizzard saw how popular legendaries are, they actually added a lot of them in 7.1.5. And I was reading through some of their effects, and I thought to myself, from a PvE perspective, I don't know how I feel about it. Now, I'm somebody right now that's PvEing and PvPing in Legion. I am running through all the raids. We're trying to get Emerald Dream Mythic started. We are running Emerald Dream Heroic on lockdown, just farming gear. We are doing the Helio fight, we did a normal, going to be doing heroic, and I'm very excited to get into all this. But as I'm reading through patch 7.1.5, it seems like some people are going to be almost required to get certain legendaries in order to literally be ahead of everybody else. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. The PvP community already talked before about the RNG of gear, and sometimes let's say you really need a trinket, that's what you're trying to replace, and with the RNG way of getting gear in Legion PvP, you're just trying to go for a trinket, trying to do BGs, trying to do arenas, hoping that a trinket drops, and you get cloak after cloak after cloak, which they actually reduce how many cloaks drop from BGs, which I thought, wow, you actually have to reduce that, that's a bit ridiculous. But yes, they actually had to reduce how many cloaks you get from PvP. But anyway, the RNG system, while I guess it's interesting and can be very exciting, like, whoa, I got this really cool item at a random chance, that's exciting, you know, it's like winning a gamble or winning a lottery. But to know that, hey, whether I'm going to be able to be useful for my raid or not, or whether I'm going to be ahead in DPS or not, is all up to RNG does kind of suck. Let me give you a situation. Let's say you have Bill. Bill is an Affliction Warlock and does PvE for raid. And then you have Joe, also an Affliction Warlock, and they have fairly same gear. Actually, they have exact same gear. They're almost identical twins, right? Bill and Joe. Bill is the kind of guy that gets home from work, right? He researches all the Warlock updates, he researches his cooldowns, researches his rotation, practices it before the raid starts. He does all the homework needed. And then Joe kind of does the homework, but he's not quite amazing at the rotation. He's not quite, you know, amazing at playing the Warlock. He's not really getting his timing right. He doesn't have the best mobility. Doesn't really, you know, set up his portal ahead of the fights. Doesn't really do the work that Bill does. But because Joe has a legendary, he does 20k more DPS than Bill. No matter what Bill does, no matter how ham Bill goes, and no matter how many situations Bill takes advantage of in terms of DPS, knowing that Joe is ahead of competition just thanks to a legendary is a little bit demoralizing. And Blizzard is adding a few legendaries that are changing the gameplay and are giving advantage to a few players just because they have a legendary. I, on one hand, have a legendary for my character, for my main, that gives me, what is it, 15% more shadow damage every time I use a combo point building ability. They're increasing it to 20%. My class, as long as I'm building combo points as an Outlaw or Assassination, probably a little bit better for Outlaw, allows me to generate a lot more damage than somebody who doesn't have that legendary, simply because I have it. And I don't know, I'm in that boat. I'm that guy that has a legendary. I'm happy with it, but it's just like, it's weird that we're at a point where we need one. Let me read you one more. There's a Hunter one coming out. Dire Beast gains 1 additional charge. It's a shoulder piece that allows Beastmaster Hunters to have 1 extra charge of Dire Beast. So I don't know what how strong Dire Beast is. I don't really know if that helps Beastmaster Hunters, but it does increase how often you can use your resources. And having 2 Dire Beasts on a target in the opener allows you to spend a lot more resources, and especially during the rest of the fight, as you have a proc chance for Dire Beast reset. So having 2 charges, you are ahead in energy. And I don't even need to play Beastmaster Hunter as a rogue. If one rogue has 20% energy regen more than another rogue, like so one guy has 100% energy regen, the other guy has 120. The guy that has more energy regen is definitely ahead of the competition. He is far ahead of the first guy. And I know that with the rogues, if it's like this with rogues, chances are it is similar with hunters because they use similar resource mechanic, except one recharges much slower than the other. I don't know how I feel about legendaries, guys. It's just weird to see that they're just becoming part of the game and integral. They're no longer legendary, and I feel like they should just be marked epic items at this point. I don't know. I feel like a legendary should be something somebody worked their ass for and maybe did some professions, did some epic quests to do, right? But just to get them at random, I just don't know how I feel about it. What are your thoughts, guys? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'd love to hear you guys' responses. And everybody have a happy, great Turkey Day. That's coming out Thursday. Thank you, guys.